a silent earthquake in the Constitution. While most Americans were glued to political headlines, courtroom drama, and culture wars, a quiet but powerful event unfolded inside the marble halls of the Supreme Court. In a rare moment of total agreement, the justices issued a 9-0 unanimous decision, not on a technicality or minor regulation, but on a fundamental question that strikes at the heart of personal freedom. This ruling doesn't shout about the Second Amendment, but if you carry a firearm, own one, or simply care about how far government force can go, this decision changes everything. The case Barnes versus Felix centered on a police shooting, but the court's opinion reached far beyond one tragedy. It redefined how the Fourth Amendment protects you from excessive force and unconstitutional seizures. And here's the critical twist. This wasn't just a correction, it was a complete rejection of the way lower courts have handled these cases for years. The ruling demands a new standard, a deeper one that considers the full context of an incident, not just the split second when a weapon is drawn. So why should gun owners care? Because this changes how every armed citizen might be treated in a traffic stop, during a home visit, or while simply exercising their rights. The rules of engagement have shifted and they now lean toward accountability. In this episode of Survival Firearms, we're cutting through the legal fog to bring you the clear truth. What the justices ruled and why it matters. How this affects self-defense cases and concealed carriers, and what every responsible gun owner must understand going forward. Let's break down this ruling step by step. Chapter 1. The story of Barnes versus Felix. At the center of the case is a tragic and fast-moving confrontation. An officer, Robert Felix Jr., conducted a traffic stop on a man named Ashton Barnes, who was suspected of toll violations. Things escalated quickly. The officer asked Barnes to exit the vehicle. Barnes opened the door and initially complied, but then, in a sudden move, attempted to drive away. Officer Felix, acting instinctively, jumped onto the vehicle's door ledge. Within 2 seconds, he fired 2 shots into the car. Barnes was hit and fatally wounded. The entire event from vehicle movement to fatal shot lasted around 5 seconds. In the aftermath, Barnes's mother sued Officer Felix, arguing that her son's Fourth Amendment rights had been violated by the use of excessive force. The question was this: did Officer Felix act lawfully in that instant of perceived threat? And more importantly, what legal standard should courts use to decide that? Chapter 2. The moment of threat standard. Lower courts, especially the Fifth Circuit, had long applied something called the moment of threat rule. This means courts only evaluate the officer's actions at the exact moment of force, not what led up to it, not what happened afterward. So if the officer felt threatened in that split second, the shooting was justified. Period. That's what happened here. Both the district court and the Fifth Circuit sided with Officer Felix, saying the 2 seconds where he clung to the car while it moved justified deadly force. But this narrow focus had a problem. Context was ignored. What led to the officer stepping onto the car? Could the situation have been de-escalated earlier? Were Barnes's earlier actions actually dangerous or misunderstood? Those questions were off-limits under the moment of threat approach, and that's what the Supreme Court found troubling. Chapter 3. The Supreme Court's rejection of narrow analysis. In a 9-0 decision, written by Justice Elena Kagan, the court rejected the moment of threat doctrine. Instead, the justices ruled that excessive force cases under the Fourth Amendment must be evaluated based on the totality of circumstances. That means the entire interaction is relevant. Officers' decisions leading up to the use of force matter, and courts must weigh whether the force used was objectively reasonable from the perspective of a reasonable officer at the scene, not in hindsight. The opinion emphasized the totality of the circumstances inquiry has no time limit. Earlier facts may show why an officer would view ambiguous conduct as threatening or as harmless. In short, context matters. This sets a new precedent for how excessive force is evaluated, and that affects every interaction between police and citizens nationwide. Chapter 4. Why gun owners should care. You might be asking, what does this have to do with the Second Amendment? Here's the answer: everything. More and more, law-abiding gun owners are finding themselves in tense encounters with law enforcement. Maybe it's a traffic stop where you inform the officer you're carrying legally. Maybe it's a home visit based on a red flag law or a mistaken identity. In these situations, the use of force can escalate quickly. And until now, courts mostly ignored what led up to that force focusing only on the final second. This ruling changes that. It allows courts to look at the full context, including whether the officer misunderstood a legal action as threatening. For gun owners, that could be the difference between being wrongfully blamed for a fatal misunderstanding or having the courts recognize that your rights were violated. The Fourth Amendment and Second Amendment are now more deeply intertwined than ever before. Chapter 5: The Totality of Circumstances, a New Legal Framework. The Supreme Court didn't just reject a narrow doctrine, it gave us something better. By emphasizing the totality of circumstances, the court created a clearer, more balanced framework for evaluating police use of force. This means that both sides of the story, what the officer saw and what actually happened, must be weighed together. Here's what's now required. Courts must examine the full timeline of events, not just the final moments. Officers can no longer claim justification based solely on perceived threat if that threat was shaped by earlier decisions they made. Prior interactions, behavior patterns, verbal cues, and escalation attempts all become legally relevant evidence. That changes everything in how self-defense cases, wrongful shootings, and lawful gun owner encounters will be litigated. It's a standard rooted in fairness, and it restores constitutional depth to how the Fourth Amendment is applied in modern law enforcement scenarios. Chapter 6: Repercussions for state and federal courts. This wasn't just a slap on the wrist for the Fifth Circuit, it was a direct challenge to how multiple federal circuits have been handling excessive force cases for decades. Some circuits had adopted versions of the moment of threat rule, others applied broader standards inconsistently. Now, with this unanimous Supreme Court ruling, all courts are on notice. Here's what will happen. Lower courts must now reevaluate pending excessive force cases. Appeals from previous rulings under narrow standards may be revived. Future cases will lean heavily on the Barnes versus Felix ruling as precedent. In plain terms, this case is reshaping federal jurisprudence across all 50 states. Lawyers representing victims of police overreach now have a Supreme Court-approved argument. Context is constitutionally required. That gives new legal life to cases once deemed unwinnable. Chapter 7: The Gun Owner's Reality Check. If you're a gun owner, here's the reality. You are statistically more likely to encounter law enforcement than most other citizens. Whether it's at a traffic stop, range check, hunting license check, or a knock on the door, the stakes are high. What happens in those first few seconds of an encounter can be life-altering. This ruling empowers citizens to challenge wrongful conduct without being silenced by narrow legal doctrines, attorneys to argue your rights in broader, fact-based ways, judges to demand more accountability from officers who escalate unnecessarily. This doesn't make all use of force illegal, but it raises the legal standard for justifying it. Gun owners, especially those carrying concealed or exercising open carry, must now understand that the totality of their conduct matters, but so does the officer's behavior leading up to any incident. That legal symmetry was long overdue. Chapter 8: The Role of the Second and Fourth Amendments Together. For years, constitutional debates treated the Second Amendment and Fourth Amendment as separate arenas, one about gun rights, the other about searches and seizures. But this ruling blurs that divide in a good way. Here's how they now connect. The Second Amendment protects your right to carry. The Fourth Amendment protects your right to not be wrongfully searched, seized, or harmed because you are carrying legally. Think about that. Your right to bear arms is only truly secure if courts also recognize that you shouldn't be punished for exercising it. This ruling means that lawful gun ownership can no longer be used as justification for lethal force unless the full context warrants it. That's a shield every gun owner should understand, and it marks a historic convergence of constitutional rights. Chapter 9: What this means going forward. The road ahead is significant. Already, legal scholars are calling Barnes versus Felix the Miranda ruling for use of force cases a decision that fundamentally changes how the Constitution protects you during encounters with the state. What's next? Police training will need to adapt. Officers must now account for how their actions before a shooting may be judged in court. Gun rights advocates have a new legal tool for defending citizens wrongfully targeted in gray area encounters. States and municipalities may face new lawsuits, policy revisions, and pressure to align law enforcement practices with this broader interpretation. And the court didn't stop there. By issuing a 9-0 ruling, they sent a message: this isn't political, this is constitutional. It may be the beginning of a new era in how police powers are restrained, rights are enforced, and citizens are respected under the law. Why this decision matters for all of us. This ruling may not be trending on cable news, but it should be, because whether you're a gun owner, a rights advocate, or someone who just wants a fair justice system, Barnes versus Felix changes the landscape. It's a reaffirmation that your rights don't stop when you're pulled over, questioned, or confronted. The message from the Supreme Court is clear. Constitutional rights require context, not convenience. If you've ever wondered whether a court would truly examine all the facts in a controversial shooting, now there's hope. If you feared being misunderstood during a tense moment while carrying legally, now there's a precedent that protects you. So here's what I want you to do. Share this video with your community. People need to know this ruling exists. Drop a comment. Does this ruling make you feel more protected or still concerned? And most importantly, subscribe to Survival Firearms for more real, accurate updates on the legal battles that affect your rights. Stay sharp, stay legal, and stay free. We'll see you in the next one.